paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Merry Christmas, ghosts and Grinches. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted. It may be Christmas where you are, but around here, it's always Halloween or Men in Black or Legend of Boggy Creek or The Exorcist. Well, whatever you're into, maybe even conspiracy theory. We got it all here. You need to become a member too. But I have got a really special guest because, again, it's Christmas, but there's still spirits around. And I have got a guest that's just amazing. I met this young lady back in 2011 when the family team, ghost hunting team she was a part of, threw on a conference, and I was a guest speaker. I had no idea, really, how this girl was going to develop into an incredible, amazing ghost hunter. That was in eastern Missouri. Now she's over in eastern Kansas, my stomping ground. You know, hey, how I feel about Kansas. And she has been in some of the most incredible places, done some amazing investigations. And we're going to talk to her right now because, well, honestly, other than about 3 minutes ago, I have not talked to her face to face or computer to computer since 2011. So let me bring Natalie up.
Hi.
Natalie, how are you? It's been so long.
It has. It's been a really long time, but I'm doing good. I've been super busy. I've got the two teams, one back in Missouri and then now here in Kansas. We just did an open ghost hunt. We've been all over the place.
You guys have. I've been on your sites and all, and the different places you've been to is incredible. We've got some photos I just got to throw up here because we were both so young looking back then. And like I said, I just shaved the dreadlocks that week, so I don't know, but you still look about the same. You're probably a little taller now.
No, unfortunately, still the same height. It's great for the tunnels, though. I don't hit my head on the beams. It's great.
But that seems like now so long ago, but you were, if I remember right, it was kind of a family ghost hunting team?
Correct. My stepmom and my dad ran the team, and it was all family members that were involved.
And at that stage of the game, you was kind of backup or?
Well, sort of. I did prep? A lot of behind the scenes. So I did a lot of the PR work, editing, video and audio, calling, doing interviews. But by that point in 2011, I was starting to actually get involved with the investigations themselves.
Okay. Yeah, again, so long ago. And that building was
it's still there.
It is. And is it still got the angelic activity?
It does have some. So there were new owners that took over and they fixed it up really nicely. So now it's more of a wedding venue than it is a B&B. But they've done wonders for the place. It doesn't quite look the same inside as it used to, but there's definitely still some activity there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I got to get back down there next time I'm in Missouri. So.
The basement's where it's at.
And I don't think I was in the basement, but I didn't actually investigate. I did some of the upstairs rooms where they said the angels had been seen multiple times.
Yep.
What did you find there when you were investigating?
So I had a few encounters with some children, specifically a little boy who was killed down there. I was drawn by him to the underside of the stairs, and that was actually where they had found his body. There's a negative presence that was in the basement as well. He was kind of in charge of the slaves when they were going back and forth through the tunnels there, which is now all sealed up. But a lot of the homes and businesses across the street from the railroad tracks had access to this tunnel.
And this was called the depot, right?
The Arlington Bed and Breakfast.
Arlington. That's right.
Yep.
The Arlington.
Yeah,
But
it was the old train station.
yeah, that's where I got confused. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was a neat building and all, and you all put on a really good conference.
It was great. It was our first big conference. And I'm hoping to actually kind of replicate that here in the next year or so. So we're in the process of trying to put that together. But there's quite a few other conferences coming up that I'm going to be attending. So I'm super excited about that.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it myself. I want to hear more about it. We'll bring you back on. You can tell us who you got coming when you get it set up.
Absolutely.
All right. So you're an investigator now. So Christmas time, that is the time for ghost stories. Lay it on us.
It sure is, man. I mean, we love spending time with the family, but let's be honest, in this line of work, we get along with the dead a lot better than the living.
I don't think it's just this line of work. I think it's my personality. I just
probably.
I got a graveyard on my property. Sweetest neighbors are quiet. Never hear from them.
Oh man, I wish my neighbors were that way. Hopefully they're not watching.
Good luck. Okay.
Right. So we just did one investigation. Recently, we held an open investigation to the public at Ellenwood, Kansas, at the historic Wolf Hotel. We raised a bunch of money to help with keeping that open and restoring and preservation of the location.
Let's stop there for a second, because all the ghost hunting groups that I know of, now including yours, does a lot of charity work, and it's usually either for animals or something like preserving a building. I was down there at the in Holton, Kansas, at the Hotel Josephine.
I did that one also.
Yeah, it is a cool place.
Yeah, the local news channel came out and investigated it with us, which we've actually got a clip of that on here.
Cool. Oh, wow. But why do ghost hunting groups like that spend so much time with charity?
If it wasn't for these locations, like, my focus has definitely been towards the historical locations. If it's not for them, we wouldn't have places to investigate.
Okay.
And keeping those alive, helping restore it. I mean, we all know that when you do construction on a location, activity tends to increase. But at the same time, this is their home. This is what they love. And you tend to find a lot more respect. And even the evidence that you collect can tend to be more on a positive spectrum than on the negative.
I have found that, although there was one spirit in Holton, they got on what do they call those cameras with the green lines where the ghost is? Yeah, it was hitting me. It was behind me, just kept hitting me. And I didn't say anything mean, I don't think. Did you find anything there that was mean?
Let's see. For that one, we didn't come across anything negative. Even in the Buffalo Room, which is supposed to be the most haunted room there with the most activity, we actually didn't get a whole lot there, other than a couple orb photos. But other than that, we got the most activity in the basement, which always seems to be where anytime I'm around, it's always the basement that's active. Because I hate basements with a passion. I could do tunnels and dark holes, but forget about the basement. But we actually had a lot of kids that were wanting to play with us. And we've got a habit of taking lollipops with us, and we leave them there as an offering when we know that there's going to be children's spirits.
Okay. When we were in there, I put some K2 meters, beautiful video of the K2 meters, and we told them we wanted them to kick the ball. The K2s were by the ball, counted down 3, 2, 1, and all the meters went crazy. It was just amazing. And then a big orb was just coming right at the camera while it was all going on. And then when we told them, all right, stop and rest, all of them went off.
The Wolf Hotel was that way for me. We were using the ghost balls, the little cat balls. We were using those, and I'd asked for it to roll the ball towards me, and it did. It rolled towards me, which the table had kind of like a dip in the middle, so it would have had to have force to actually roll towards me, and then it turned around and went back.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
I have talked here about the Hotel Josephine. I've had Gunnar as one of my first guests. Tell me about the history of the Wolf.
So the Wolf has a lot. Again, tunnels. But there was a speakeasy below the tunnel. There was a barber shop. There's even a mistress of the night that is said to be there. And even on the little bed that they have down there, if you ask her to talk with you, she will, and she'll give you signs and all kinds of stuff on your recordings. And then you pay her. You put $1 or whatever on the bed, and then she's gone. You paid her for her service, and she's gone, which I thought was really awesome.
You're telling me there is, and I'm going to be a little more blunt, there's a ghost of a prostitute.
Yes.
Who will, I'm sorry, do tricks if you pay them.
Yes, exactly. And let me tell you that we did this on the open investigation, and people were just rolling at what was happening. And like, you could lay in the bathtubs, like the old steel tubs that they would have. And the K2 meters would go off, and we were having a blast. We were having a blast with it.
Okay, I got to get down there to see this place. This sounds like my kind of joint, man.
It's awesome. It really is. And I mean, just the activity alone, the library, the speakeasy bar that they have had a ton of activity. We've got some really awesome audio clips from upstairs when nobody was around. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting.
Do they have the name of this lady?
No, they don't. And I wish they did. There's been some people who have come up with some names, but there's no documented history of her name.
Okay.
But they do have a well, an actual well in what's called the doll room. And they have a Divic box in there as well. But you can see down into this well. And at one point, they found a human finger bone. And they had it sent off for testing so that it was, in fact, human. And the speculation is that that is where they would dispose of the women that were no longer of service.
Remind me what a divot box is.
So a divot box kind of looks like a fancy jewelry box or just some kind of small chest. And it's known to hold negative spirits, negative entities within them. And if you were to open it up, it would be releasing that. A lot of them also believe to have curses on them.
And where did these come from?
So this is, if I'm not mistaken, it's more of a Romanian type of story, myth. Okay. I would say, from what I'm understanding, I'm not all that familiar with Divic boxes. This was probably only the second one I've ever actually seen. But one of the other teams that was there investigating did a spirit box session in there. And it kept telling them to open the box. And it was calling them out by name. So I'm really waiting to see their recorded video and audio from that session. I can't wait.
And who did this?
This was Third Shift Paranormal and Logan and Aaron Paranormal Investigations.
Oh, when you hear about it, let me know and let me get in contact with these people. I'd love to hear it. Absolutely. Let me ask your opinion, because we're talking about, have you ever heard of a devil's toy box?
I have not.
Apparently it is a complete cube of mirrors that you can build. And as long as all the mirrors are facing each other, glued down, so the mirrors are all facing each other.
Yeah.
And people who have put microphones said they can hear sounds of screaming, sometimes fire, demonic laughter.
I mean, it would make sense because mirrors in general are known to be portals. And so the fact that something could be crossing back and forth that way is not, I guess, unheard of. It's no different than the Devil's Well and sending the drones down there, and they catch these weird sounds and garbled screams under the water.
Oh, now I don't know about that. I remember the one in Russia where they allegedly dug the deepest pit ever and could hear the sounds of screaming.
Yeah, there's another one. It's here in the United States, I believe. I think it's out on the West Coast. I don't quote me for sure, but I think so. But there's a YouTuber who had sent his drone down into like this really deep hole, and you could hear screams.
That wouldn't be Mel's hole, would it?
It might be.
Okay.
It might be. It's been a while since I've seen that video.
Let's get back to talking about you. You've sent me some pictures.
Yeah.
And folks, let me tell you, she sent me tons of pictures. I pulled a few off because, come on, we only got an hour. So let's take a look at some of the pictures here, and you can tell us what we're looking at.
Okay, so this is at the Blackwell Cemetery in Blackwell, Missouri. So this picture was actually caught myself and one other. There were some children spirits in the cemetery because it was also a slave cemetery. And there were slaves with unmarked graves down at the foot of the cemetery. And a male presence was there, and I was doing a communication session, and the children wanted to talk and they wanted to leave, but this male presence kept saying, no, don't talk to them, stay. And we end up helping cross some of them over and letting them know that, you know, he has no control over you. You don't have to stay. You can go on to your loved ones on the other side. Mm-hmm. So this was actually caught at that moment as I was helping them cross over.
And was you getting this as EVPs, or was this a psychic thing?
This was more of a psychic thing.
Okay.
Definitely, I get the mediumship from my father's side. But I've also had the ability with clairaudience. So that's been a great thing to have for investigations.
Nice. So Blackwell, was you in anywhere near where the general store had burned and there was only a what'd you call it? Foundation left?
There is. I haven't been out to that one. I know there's the old building where the nun is said to be up on the roof and you can see her when you're driving by. Mm-hmm. There's also the Blackwell Bridge with the phantom car.
Right on the other side of the Blackwell Bridge is that foundation. And I had the most amazing experience there, which in the last 5 years, I'm hearing a lot of other people had the same thing in different places. It looked like the movie Predator. While we was inside that old foundation, something was walking back and forth on the top, and you could see things morphing, like it, whatever was behind it was going around. You know what I'm saying? It was just like in the movie Predator.
Yeah.
And 3 of us was sitting there watching this thing move, but it was invisible except the background was changing.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll be back down that way in June of 2023 for an open investigation at Vallis Mines that I'm hosting. So I'll have to go check that out while I'm there.
You got to Vallis Mines. Awesome.
Yeah, I've done Vallis Mines since I first started investigating, and those have some of my best stories ever.
Well, tell us a couple, because the only group I ever knew who went in there was Paranormal Task Force.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Paranormal Task Force and a lot of the cases that they've done. They're pretty familiar with Zombie Road. That's
very much
their domain. But with Vallis Mines, I'm still good friends with Steve Frazier, the owner. I talk to him rather frequently, and he hosts Ghost Roundup down there. So some of the things that I've had experience there was a particular room that had like a 3D mapping of the whole property with all the mines and the buildings and everything, so you could kind of get a view. And around this room, there were shelves with rocks and boulders that were collected from the property. And we were doing a communication session in that room, all holding hands, and we could hear the rocks moving. And we started getting pelted on the back of our legs with these rocks that were flying in the room. And there was nobody else. I mean, we had it on camera, we had it on audio. Unfortunately, I don't have access to that anymore. But we walked out that night with bruises up and down the backs of our legs from this.
Amazing.
And then there was another incident where the spirit box had said, Natalie, watch out. And I happened to step to the side and I went, what was that? And just as I said that, there 2 rooms over, there are 2 doorways, there was an axe that was hanging on the wall. The head of that axe flew through the 2 rooms and landed exactly where I had just been standing. And we couldn't find the handle for it until that morning. When we were cleaning everything up, we found the handle behind a wagon wheel that was in the corner by the door going into the office where that had been hanging.
Tell me someone's got video of this.
No video, unfortunately. I mean, we had the audio, but no video. Everyone was sitting in the living room, and I had been standing in the doorway going into what's called the rock room. And then the next room over was the office. So I wish. And then the other big one that I had, which is my favorite one to talk about, I had a full body apparition walk up to me, got about 3-4 feet from me before fight or flight kicked in and I turned and ran. But I was there with my stepmom who was running the team. And we had the men inside because the house could only hold so many people. So we decided to do a perimeter walk with our equipment and head up towards the cemetery of the Sophie McGuire Cemetery. And we got halfway to the back of the general store where there's a porta potty, and all of our equipment lit up and just died.
Okay.
And above this porta potty, there's a little light shining down on the porta potty. And we noticed that the porta potty was shaking. My first thought was, it was a raccoon or something in there, a possum. So I kept walking forward. My stepmom did not. And she's like, Natalie, stop. And so I stopped and I looked, and from behind this porta potty, this black silhouette of a head peeked out from around the porta potty. And I was just in shock because I couldn't quite wrap my head around what I was seeing. And as I stood there, this figure stepped out, and I mean, solid black, could not see through him, even with the light shining directly down on him. He was probably a good 6.5, 7 feet, but he had a black top hat on. And he just kept walking towards me. And it just didn't click what I was seeing until he got right in front of me, and I turned, ran over the car hood, I went. And when I stood up and turned back around, he was gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about, I was just about to say, let's move on to another picture. That one we just had up.
Yep.
And then this one, where was this at?
So this is still at Blackwell. This one is actually where the slave cemetery section was. You can see these little stones, but they didn't have any names on them, and the children and the slaves were buried there. And at the top of this one, you can see a very bright orb. Mm-hmm. We had quite a few, especially being outdoors. It is really hard to determine what is water particles, bugs, dust, and orbs.
Sure.
But this one in particular, at the time, we had one of our investigators, what you see here, had marks across the back of his neck right after this was taken.
Okay. Wow. Blackwell, that is an interesting town. I only got there once, and we was at a particular home. They thought it was demonic, and I don't know. I don't think it was, but we got rid of whatever was there for the moment.
Yeah.
But that is, you got some great stories here.
I like to think so.
Okay. How about this one?
So this one was a cemetery in Springfield, Missouri. And again, up at the top, you can see what appears to be an orb. This is the one where my team is very split. Because of the coloration and the trajectory, you don't really see much of a trajectory with it. And a lot of times orbs will have a tail to them. Mm-hmm. So this one, it was really a toss-up being outside, whether if this was like pollen that we were seeing or if this was in fact an orb.
Okay. What's your opinion?
I do think this one was an orb that we captured at the time. But there's so many different moving parts to it because orbs can come in all shapes, sizes, colors.
Sure.
And this one in particular has a very solid looking mass to it, even with the coloration, whereas I've seen a lot of pollen and dust and stuff. You can still see through it.
Yeah. It looks like it's producing its own light.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. What else we got?
Let's see. So we've done Vallis Mines. There is a cemetery here in Topeka. You might be familiar with it. It's the Rochester Cemetery.
Uh-huh.
And this is actually where the albino lady is said to be. I
have heard of her, yes.
So I went out there just as the sun was setting, trying not to be arrested for being there too late. And I snapped this photo. And you can see this mist-like effect. It was not cold. It was still during the summer. So this could not have been, my breath or anything like that. It was just me. I don't smoke. So there was nothing here. And you can see some of the trees and the back a little bit. And you can see the ground and a couple little tombstone outlines.
Right.
But otherwise, it was a very open area.
Okay, now let me say I'm seeing, and maybe it's just me, because we our brain sees something out of nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing a dragon-like face on that thing. I see the two eyes right there. It's right on the center edge, and a mouth, and then it looks like almost like a wing coming out of the back.
So funny enough with that, I had someone else bring up that it looks like an angel. The
Okay.
wings that you see up going from the middle up towards the left corner, and then the body has that yellowish glow. And someone said that they thought that was an angel. I mean, there's so many things. It's like looking at clouds, and pareidolia is just one of those things that our brains are programmed to look for. So, I mean, it's hard to say. It potentially could be, but I mean, there's not really so much as full substance. Like the one that we had shown earlier at Blackwell, where you could see the silhouette. That was a little bit more defined, whereas this one, I don't quite see that.
Well, I understand about pareidolia and all that, however you pronounce that word, but I am familiar with it. But it's sort of like orbs. Just because you can come up with a reason that they may be something else doesn't mean they are.
Yep.
And I am definitely seeing something looking right at you.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Do we have any more photos? I don't recall.
Yes.
And so this one I'm seeing a face. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. So this one was actually at a private residence that we were investigating. A young girl was being tormented by shadow figures. She was having night terrors. She was waking up with marks. She was being pushed, pulled, the whole 9 yards. And apparently the people who had owned the home that they were in had done satanic rituals. And they had one of those old-fashioned, like big giant box TVs that are really heavy and takes like 2 or 3 people to lift.
Right.
That thing would tip over on its own.
A console television would tip over on its own.
Would tip over on its own. And the shadows that she was seeing. So we did a property cleanse, but this was taken just outside in the yard. And again, I mean, nobody was smoking. I'm very big about making sure I hold my breath before I take pictures. Just so I don't give that effect. But yeah, so this was quite interesting because this one, I mean, looking at it, you can see a couple different things. You can see a face. You can see what appears to some of us like the face of like a bull or a cow.
Okay.
Like you can see this little spot up here at the top left corner looks like an eye.
Yeah.
And then it looks like large nostrils further down.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was just something that we had seen. And then with the history of the activity there, last time that I had spoken with her, she was no longer going through any of this. She seems to have been left alone. So it looks like everything that we did to help cleanse and the protection vials and things like that. We also had someone come out and bless the property. So that was a start.
Okay. Let's talk about that because my experiences with shadow people or whatever you want to call them, shadow men, I've had one who was aggressive, and that was at the what do they call the Diamonds, the old Route 66 truck stop there, the Diamonds. And the rest of them all seem to flee as soon as you see them. They're more like watchers. What do you think was harassing this girl?
I definitely think that there had been some type of an attachment at this point. I mean, there's so many different beliefs as to what they could have been and what we were dealing with. They seem to be focused around the girl, which isn't uncommon in young pubescent females,
right?
To, have even that poltergeist-like activity from, the energy that's being put out.
Sure.
We definitely think that was adding to it. But because she was a child, they did not have a particular faith that they believed in. She was very much so open. And from what I understand, she was going through a lot at school with being bullied, which I think opened her up also. And then whatever had been there from the previous owners really found her as easy prey at that point. So we were able to get her to see someone, a counselor. We were able to involve a local non-denominational church to help. And then, of course, with what we went in and did.
Okay. Yeah. So let's get back to the shadow men. Do you think in this case they were demonic or simply bullies?
No, I don't think they were necessarily demonic. I do think it was an entity that did not have good intent. but that doesn't necessarily make them demonic.
Right.
I think there's so many other levels to it. They, like you said, watchers. They could be informants. They could be psychologically created, similar to like with a poltergeist that's being put out there because she was dealing with all this bullying. This energy was manifesting itself into these shadows.
Okay. So you don't know, or you wouldn't hazard a guess whether this was something created or brought there by the family prior that had the rituals?
It's hard to say. Not having known what exactly they did, only the little bits of items that we found on the property, some of the sigils that we found, kind of gave us an idea of what we were dealing with. But I mean, they were long gone before we ever showed up.
Sure. But you've also dealt with an aggressive shadow man with a top hat, and the hat man is almost a little different from shadow people. So
Correct.
what did you deal with that night? Was that demonic, or was that something else?
When I think about it, I mean, it scared the crap out of me. Don't get me wrong. That was the first full body apparition I'd ever had actually come up to me like that. And it lasts for so long. Because usually it's a very quick corner of your eye and gone. Yeah. I don't think it was negative. I don't think it was malicious, at least not towards me. That location is known for the male entity that owned the property, Mr. Valley. He has an aggression towards men, but he was a ladies' man. So I'm not sure if it was more curiosity, or just with me having the psychic abilities that I do, that I was able to witness this. But my stepmom as well witnessed it right alongside with me. So it wasn't just one person. I have another witness to this. His intent was not directed at me. So he may have had negative energy, but it wasn't directed and it wasn't affected me per se, if that makes sense.
While he may not have been the nicest person in life, he was not intending you harm.
Correct.
He was just presenting himself.
I think so. I think it was just a form of communication. I'm here and you know it. Proceed with caution.
Okay. And what about that light you saw over that portable toilet? Do you think that was...
No, I mean, they had an outdoor light that shined down so you could see where you were going. But the part that always struck me as fascinating was that even though this entity was standing directly under this light, the light never passed through him or behind him. It was just like it stopped and it was just solid black.
Okay.
Which is different than what I'm used to seeing, because normally I could see kind of transparently behind, and this one I couldn't.
Okay. Wow. That, if anything would even come close to frightening me, it's that, because I don't know what I'm dealing with. And me and demons, I try to stay clear of those. So
I think that's what excited me the most and really progressed for me to keep going in this line of work. I don't know. I like weird.
My first one was standing at the end of a bar. We was investigating a bar. And I said, does anyone see that shadow over there? And it suddenly moved with just incredible speed, made a right angle turn and through a door. And a lot of people since then, and even before then, have seen that shadow person. But he was just kind of standing there at the bar watching us until I mentioned I saw him, and then he took off like he wasn't supposed to be seen.
Right.
And that got me into this. But I also believe demons can pretend to be shadow people.
Oh, I agree. I mean, they're great at, getting you to lower your guard, getting you to open up and think. That's the very controversial topic of Ouija boards, because it's, Russian roulette. You don't know what's on the other side. You can't see it.
Right.
I mean, it's a total gamble. And a lot of times they'll portray as family members, loved ones, children, things that we naturally as humans put our guard down towards. And yeah, I think they're great at doing the pranks and being a trickster of so many different things.
Yeah. About you, you're in Western Missouri now?
So I'm in, this would be, I guess, Eastern Kansas now.
Okay.
I'm in Topeka. So I'm in the capital of Kansas. And then my other team is in just south of St. Louis, Missouri.
And what's that team called?
So they're both under Darkly Obscured Paranormal Investigations.
Okay.
That one's Dopey Mo from Missouri, and this is Dopey Katie, Kansas division. So.
All right. And how did you all end up in the Arlington?
So the Arlington, I lived in DeSoto for a little while.
Okay.
So I got pretty familiar, but we had a slew of cases in 2018-ish, give or take, 2019, that a lot of private residences in the old district were having paranormal activity. They're having accounts. There's the DeSoto house. There were a few private residences. And when we started mapping them out and putting pinpoints, we started noticing that there was a trend and that they ran parallels to each other.
So were they running parallel to the railroad?
They were. And they were also, and the Arlington happened to be centered right in the middle of them. And they went clear across from one side of town to the other, but they were all on the same streets or crossing streets. So we thought that was really interesting to find that it was going that way. I mean, it's fascinating because you have cases and you're like, oh, we were in this area not too long ago. But when you have a string of them that are reaching out to you, or people are like, hey, my mom's house has activity going on, can you go check it out? First thing I say, okay, where is it at? And they're like, oh, it's on 6th Street. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've got 3 cases on 6th Street. So it's interesting when you can physically take the data and see it. And the way that it maps out just made everything come together. And the way that the activity was happening was that we had entities that were jumping from location to location. But the area also has a lot of limestone, and limestone is known for creating energy. So, and DeSoto has a lot of springs, underground springs. The library sits right on top of one, and the library has activity. And some of the other local homes had wells underneath their basements, and they were having activity. So we definitely noticed that water and the limestone had a big factor into it.
That is why Missouri was so amazingly haunted, I believe. It was limestone and water.
In Alton. I mean, that was a great location we investigated. And it had so much activity. And then you had the old-fashioned pools for the girls and for the boys. And I mean, the meat locker, a lot of activity in that room.
Yes. Yeah. Now I've been in there multiple times, and I was there with Gateway Paranormal team. That was their base. I don't know if you knew those guys, but the little girl ghost in the pool, gosh, she was so playful, and she would do anything would you set the meter off? Would you stop? Would you do it again? It was incredible spirit.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. Yeah, we had the same thing. I actually saw the little girl in the upstairs in one of the windows. I happened to walk in. I was the only one up there, and I rounded the corner to go into a room, and I saw my reflection, but then directly behind me was a little girl, and I spun around, and she was gone.
I got to speak to the Confederate soldier in the 3rd floor. Did you ever get to do anything with him?
No, I don't think we did a dowsing rod session, and I was communicating with somebody. We just weren't sure who. And the same thing with the lady on the stairs. We got the smell of perfume, but we never had much more interaction beyond that.
The basement and the foundation of that building was made from stones from the old Confederate prison, the prison for Confederate soldiers. And he came there with that, but he also told me he was with a particular group that was butchered unnecessarily, Major Wilson's, and the revenge killings. And I think he was telling me what I wanted to hear.
I find that a lot. We did, was it the Crescent Hotel in Arkansas? And the hotel was great. In fact, one of the male individuals that was there with me was impacted so negatively, he became aggressive.
Wow.
And this other guy started taunting him to the fact that, like, he came around the corner and the guy popped out and went, boo. And this gentleman got so enraged, which was uncharacteristic for him. And at one point, they had to have the police called. But as soon as he stepped off the property and away from the hotel, it was a quick switch, and he was totally fine, like nothing happened.
You think that had something to do with Dr. Baker then?
Maybe. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's really hard when you do. I love the hotel. It had a lot of activity. It was really, really hot, and the AC didn't work very well, but it was great. The tour, on the other hand, for me, I have a hard time when people are doing a show. Like, I want authenticity, not just telling me what I want to hear. And I get it. It's a tourist trap. It's what it is. But that tends to turn me away from the tour than anything.
The old man who was the one who created the tour, and I cannot remember his name right now, and I'm very upset. He was the one in the episode of Ghost Hunters that was there, who was reading Jason. And I got to interview him, and he was very nice, very open, and he knew that history back and forth.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably passed. He was like 80 when I interviewed him 12, 14 years ago. Oh, yeah. So I'm sorry to hear that they've messed up his tour, because his tour was incredible.
Yeah, I don't even think we got 5 minutes in before we were like, we can go do our own tour.
Yeah, no kidding. And I got some awesome photos there. One, I swear, is a demon in a window. So I'll have to send that to you sometime.
The morgue was interesting.
It was. I didn't have much.
The lighting, like they had that blue tinted purple lighting down there, which was kind of cool because it actually looked in one area like there was a blood stain.
Yeah.
Just the way that the light was hitting, which I thought was interesting.
I was there with John Zaffis, and I don't know if they were scared of him or what. We got nothing in the basement.
I would love to work with that man.
Interesting guy, but different.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple of videos I want to show here. Race, would you throw one up for us?
Peaceful.
Where'd you put that Famitimi thing?
Famitimi?
Yeah.
Bathroom.
One of the cabinets?
Probably.
Okay.
Unless you have it out here, but yeah, it's probably in there. It is peaceful here. I try to make my home feel peaceful.
Bed.
I'm laying on the bed. Are you next to me? That's weird.
What? It's turned off on itself?
No. Look at this magnometer. Look how high it's spiking.
No.
Out here in the middle of...
Huh.
And it said bed.
Oh. Well, I go stand right by it.
Okay. See if it changes. It's like...
What's that sound?
That's the magnometer. It's letting me know that it's spiking. Like, the further down I go, the higher it is.
How did I die?
I don't know.
I need to go.
Okay, well, I hope you cross in peace.
That is incredible. What happened?
So I was just goofing off, really. I was trying to get familiar with everything, and I was doing a test before we did an investigation the next day. And I kept waking up with that sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody had been standing over me. And at one point, I even went to sleep on the couch, and I could just feel this male presence hovering. and I just couldn't move. So I decided, we have some activity going on, which our house never has activity. It's very, very peaceful here. And I was doing this just to get familiar with everything. And I noticed that the closer to the ground I got, the more that meter was spiking. And it was really weird because I had moved things out of the way. I even went back later and it never even spiked. But at that particular moment, it was. So I don't know what was causing it. I mean, there could be a lot of things that could have affected it. But in this, it said, how did I die? And I'm like, I don't know. And then it's like, well, I have to go. And I'm like, okay, well, I hope you cross in peace. And then there was another segment right before this clip that I had been recording. And when it had said bed, and I'm like, are you sitting on the bed? Are you standing next to the bed? And right after that, there's a black shadow that goes from the bed into the wall.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't see it when I was recording it. It wasn't until we went back and looked at the video afterwards that we saw it. And I was like, well, yeah, they were on the bed. They just got up and left. Okay.
So that was nothing evil or cruel. No. It was just confused, it sounds like.
Yeah. I think just because I tend to be that, that light, they tend to be drawn towards me. My other half knew nothing about the paranormal till he met me. And I feel bad for him because he got thrown in head first. Yeah. And when
my wife was the same way.
When things start happening around the house, he's like, Natalie, tell him to go away. Can't help it. So now I'm just like, take a number, sit down. I'll get to you when I get to you, because otherwise it is just overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine how overwhelming it must be. So do you see spirits or do you just sense their presence?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Sometimes it's kind of a hit or miss. I don't know if it's necessarily because maybe the more energy they can permit, and then I can see them. But a lot of times it's a lot of in my head, that intuition feeling. I'll get images of them. Sometimes it'll even be like an old-fashioned photo strip when you hold up to the light with the negatives and you can see it. It's like that, but I can still see what's currently in the room behind it. And Amazing. It's real quick, real fast, but it's like a picture movie.
Okay.
And it's usually of like a past time or of somebody else in period type clothing. That doesn't happen very often, but it has happened.
All right, let's see that last video you sent because it's pretty cool. Go ahead, Ray.
Play with me.
Okay.
Who would you like to have play with you? There's Gabby, there's Katie, there's Ryan.
I don't know.
Would you like to talk to me specifically?
True.
Okay. It seems to have an affinity for you.
Gun.
Nice.
Well, I don't think anyone here has a gun. That's eerie.
Well, the Cowboys came through here.
That's true. Make a noise for us.
Friend.
We would love to hear you talk. We'd love to be friends.
Heart attack.
Is that how you died? From a heart attack?
The orbs seemed very interested in the camera specifically. They were always coming towards the camera.
Yep. And there's another video on Facebook and on our YouTube channel of us when we first walked into that room before that was taken. Mm-hmm. And you see this orb come into camera, stop, do a complete U-turn, and then go back.
Oh, neat.
It was great. But yeah, this was down in the basement of Hotel Josephine.
Mm-hmm. I recognized it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the KSN T27 news channel that was with us when they were following us around for that investigation.
Okay.
And they really had an affinity for Ryan, for the meteorologist. I mean, that is who they wanted to talk to. That's who they wanted to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great because we were like, well, who do you want to play with? And then I named off everyone. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's such a kid response. Like, I don't know, just whoever wants to play with me.
Let's address that, because I've never talked about that to anyone before. When I'm lecturing and I show videos of the voice boxes or the digital phone apps or whatever, and I tell people they cannot work. There is no possible way these things can work, except they do. And I cannot explain it. What is your idea on this?
Okay, so for me personally, I'm very old school. I love old school equipment. Just technology is great, and it has been wonderful for what we do. But the more the technology advances, the more questions there are on authenticity.
True. But
and that goes for phone apps. I'm not a fan of phone apps. I think that they're totally set up. But this in particular, what I was using is called GhostTube. And it's created by a paranormal dynamo team, if I think so, in Australia, Amy and Jared. And her husband is a programmer, and he made this this app for phones and other devices, and it goes off of the GPS system that Maps uses when we're trying to travel somewhere. And it creates this energy field, and when it's broken, it can be manipulated and produce words. And a lot of times I feel like the banks will just spout random words,
which they do. Yes.
And that's okay. But with this app, over time that I've been using it, it has lined up with our questions, with the history, things that some apps will like listen into the questions you're asking and then produce an answer. We won't even talk about it. And we're actually very careful about not talking about it when we have the app going, so that can't happen. And we still get names, dates, actions, just so many different things that actually make sense that don't seem to be random at all.
The first time I used a Novelist, and that was Novelist 1, so it's old. It named all 3 investigators, including me, by our first names. And then when we asked them to say it again, they did it in a different order, but the same 3 names. And then I became a believer in these things. And I've seen even the phone apps answering questions and naming names that are actually part of the history of where I'm at. So
this particular one, when I was out at Rochester Cemetery here in Topeka, I was walking around, and I like to go out to the cemeteries anyways. Total weirdo moment, but I like going out there, paying my respects, cleaning up, things like that. And I had this going, and it said behind you. And I turned around and I go, well, hello. And it goes, Natalie, I see you, doorway. And I was like, well, thank you. Hi, hello. I'm here.
I'm not going through the door.
I don't know what door you're talking about, because there isn't one. But then my mind was like, well, maybe it's a portal, some way that they're able to move back and forth, and that's what they consider a doorway.
Okay,
so it's just kind of my take on it. But it was all good things, it was like names and just different things that were being thrown out. And there happens to be a pet cemetery there as well. So, I go out there as well.
Just the word pet cemetery brings back really horrid. I read the book, so. So, all right. Well, I wish we could keep going, because you and I could talk for hours, but Natalie Kreider, how do people find out about your team, and where can they find more of these videos?
You can look up on Facebook for Darkly Obscured Paranormal Investigations. You can check YouTube as well under the same name. Natalie Dopey on Facebook is the other business account. And then here soon, we're going to have a Patreon account. So I'm super excited for that, and some upcoming events.
Yeah, you've had a lot of upcoming events. Can you?
Yeah, and I do monthly workshops. This month I took off because of the holidays. But starting next month in January, we will start back up on our workshops. And something that I hold near and dear to my heart is that I got started in the paranormal professionally when I was 10. Super young. Most don't even get involved till 17 or 18. And I'm going to be talking about how younger adolescents and the next generation can start becoming involved and learning how to properly do an investigation and review everything.
Oh, that sounds great. Tell people again, Darkly Obscure
Obscured
Obscured.
Paranormal Investigations. Yep.
Okay. And upcoming, you've got what? Can you give people a hint on what they can look forward to?
So June, the first weekend in June, we will be out in Vallis Mines, Missouri. That's just about an hour or so south of St. Louis.
Out of
For
Potosi.
the Vallis Mines Open Investigation. We'll have tickets going live after the new year to start getting those. We're currently working on some other events. There's a women's paranormal retreat out in West Virginia and the West Virginia State Penitentiary that I'm hoping to be going to in June as well. So I won't be home much in June, but on our website on Facebook for the Darkly Obscured Paranormal Investigations page, I have a list of all of my workshops for the rest of 2023. And those are done virtually, so anybody everywhere can be a part of it.
Great. And the Wolf, are you going to be going back to the Wolf soon?
I would like to. We haven't gotten that on the schedule just yet. There's a lot of irons in the fire. So, yeah.
All right. Well, keep me informed because I would like to get into that Wolf. I got a thing about women who were forced into certain jobs, and I would love to talk to that one.
She seems to love her job. So
I've done
all these years later.
And the 2 brothels that I've investigated, the female spirits were very angry with what they were forced to do. And I'd like to meet one who was happy with it, you know?
I mean, she seems to love it. I mean, she likes the attention. There's quite a bit of money on her bed.
All right. Natalie Kreider with Darkly Obscured Paranormal, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And it is so nice to see you again and to see that you've continued since 2011. And now you're doing some amazing work.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks again and take care. Have a Merry Christmas.
You too. Merry Christmas.
Bye. Wow. Is that enough ghost stories for Christmas for you? Because I'm sure there's going to be more, but can you imagine that the places have been, and again, the idea of a passed on lady of the evening who still does things for money, as far as will answer questions, set meters off, whatever. Wow. That's incredible. So anyway, real briefly, folks, I do want to remind you all to come on over and join the UNX Network. Go to unxnetwork.com, drop down on the front page. You will find a place to join for free. Now, when you do, you get so much out of this. You get the monthly UNX newsletter, and that newsletter has been really amazing lately because it was UFO flaps. We had Halloween. We've got Bigfoot sightings, and they report a lot of this. We've got access to the X blog. And the X blog comes right out when a pilot sees a UFO and reports it or whatever. And finally, the best part of this is you get the free digital copy of our magazine, the UNX magazine. And oh gosh, those stories are great. You can see just some of the headlines there. We had one just about time and people in time slips and all of that. The one for Halloween is the dark one right there. I was interviewing the folks who investigate the battleship North Carolina. The evidence they've got is just incredible. They've been my guests a couple of times, but that really gets into the history of that ship. And without history, any ghost story is just a campfire tale. History is what gives it its place, its footing in reality. So if you get a chance, join up. Again, it's free. There's no reason not to. They send you the digital magazine, or you can order a paper copy if you want. They're little more, they're not free. But the digital copy it comes to you 4 times a year, right in your email. You can read it at your leisure. And if you're not a member, you suck. No, just if you're not a member, you're really missing out here. Okay. Well, I will be back next week, but I do want to tell you all to have a Merry Christmas. I hope 2023 is better than it has been the last couple of years. At least I hope we're done with COVID. And for all my fans, all my friends, all the folks who are UNX subscribers or guests, stay spooked. Good night.